Hello. Sitting alone in my bed again at night in the dark, talking to myself. I'm honestly feeling fucking. Like, I don't even want to say this. Like, I know it's not a good thing to think. Like, I'm aware. I'm self aware. I know this isn't a healthy mindset. I know I'm not gonna act on any of these things. But I really fucking miss the hospital. I know. And if you've, like, never really been to a hospital or, like, everyone who's been to a hospital has so many. It's like so weird. Like the hospital is like one place that has so many mixed emotions. I think most are negative, for like reasonable reasons. Like a lot of people go to the hospital to like visit a loved one who's like in pain or dying, passing away. A lot of people go because they get like a dangerous injury. They're in pain. A lot of people have bad. If you work at the hospital, you might not like the hospital because you don't like your job. I don't know. There's many reasons not to like the hospital. I don't like the hospital for many reasons. I've spent such a big chunk of my life in the hospital just for like I'm embarrassed to say it, because like I didn't have somewhere to live for a while, and also I had some like issues with like eating and stuff, which I'm like very like I feel embarrassed about looking on now, but it was something that was really real for me at the time, and I miss it sometimes. And I know it's like a selfish, like I know it's like a stupid thing to say. Obviously, if I had to choose between this life, like logically, I would rather be here. But sometimes because I am here right now, I just, because I'm not in the hospital, I think about it and kind of like romanticize it, which again, like I'm aware that's like stupid. I know it's not like real, but sometimes it's not even like always something that like triggers it. Like sometimes it's just on my mind a lot. I spent like over a year of my life in the hospital, like adding it all together, maybe even 2 years, maybe like a year and a half, probably total. A lot of it was, being at the same hospital for months and months. Again, mainly like I wasn't, I didn't have something like physically wrong with me where I had to be in the hospital for a year, but I didn't have somewhere to live at the time, so I spent a lot of time in the hospital. But, like if I was there right now, I would be like fucking miserable. I'd be like, I can't wait to get out. Can't work while I'm there, can't do school, can't see friends, don't have my phone most of the time, can't, do music, can't write. Like all in all, it fucking sucks being in the hospital. I mean, again, I'm sure it's different, depending on what hospital. I'm sure there's like rich people hospitals that are better. I don't know. Depends all on like what you're there for, of course. If you're like there in like a coma or in pain, you're probably gonna be a lot more limited in what you can do. But I fucking miss. It's not even like the being lazy part, because honestly, right now I'm not working. I don't start school for a couple, 3 weeks till I start college, and I know like I can't go to the hospital. I'm not like I'm not considering going back to the hospital. I don't want that, but I can't like it like hurts again. Like if you've never really been to if you've never had like I don't know. It just I became attached to it. It's kind of like if you spend any amount of time somewhere. If you were to live in like a shitty house for a year, you might have hated it. You might never want to go back, but you also live there for a year. You get attached to the positive things, like having nurses care for you, which again I know is like a selfish thing to want. There's plenty of sick people who need nurses. I'm not gonna. It's just my intrusive thoughts. I record myself to be brutally honest. This is what I feel, and as irrational it is, sometimes I miss having nurses, concerned about me. I miss having like an IV. I know this like sounds like screwed up, but it's just like sometimes like I was like just saw like a picture of someone today, like in the hospital with like an IV, hospital gown, and like I was like, sometimes I miss it, just like a little bit, just like feeling. That sounds so like depressing, like feeling cared for. But you know what is, feeling looked after by nurses, having them concerned about you, being just looked after. Maybe that's like my parental figure issues, not having a stable family. Probably is, honestly, but and you just feel so like so secure there. Nothing's gonna happen to you. I mean, obviously something could, but it's way safer in the hospital than anywhere else, pretty much. There's always people awake. There's always people working. You're like I was on like usually one of the higher floors. Like in your own room, in your own bathroom. Well, sometimes I was in a double, but it's very clean there. If you're in a nice hospital, I've been to less nice ones, but it's just such like a different feeling. And I was like at one hospital where I was like just with a bunch of other patients, and I got really close to patients there. And it's just so fucking different from the real world, because it really isn't the real world. Like I know that, and I think again, like I would 100 times over choose any life outside of the hospital than living in the hospital. It's just like sometimes I get kind of caught off guard and get stupid, and I'm like I kind of miss it. I think the hardest thing is knowing that I'm never gonna have it again, because I'm not gonna let myself go to the hospital. I'm not gonna do that to myself. But it's kind of like, well, I'm never going to experience that ever again. I mean, obviously, if I get like in a car accident or something, I would hopefully go to the hospital, but I'm never going to have that same experience. I'm never going to be a kid again in a hospital. I might go when I'm an adult, but it's going to be a lot different, Like, I'm not going to have this like not worrying about paying, because right now, mind, I'm not paying out of pocket when I went to the hospital. I mean, hopefully I'll have insurance when I'm older, I don't know, but I never want to go to the hospital again. But, if I don't ever go to the hospital again, I'm never going to experience that familiar feeling, which again, is not a good feeling. It's just familiar. I, lived over a year in my life, and it's not even like just any old year of my life. It was like a very formative year. It was when I was like 13 to 14, and then, some time when I was 15. And then I just went recently, which again is so fucking embarrassing. It wasn't even like anything intentional. It was just, some other health stuff. But, kind of going back kind of triggered me because before, I would sometimes like think about it, but I was like, I spent a whole year of my life in the hospital. I'm done with that. And then I went to the hospital for some other reasons recently, just for like a month or so. But that was long enough for me to be like, damn, like I kind of obviously I didn't miss all of it, but there were just some little things that were very familiar to me. It was like eating like a childhood food or something, just brought back a lot of memories. And it's like I'm never gonna experience that again because I'm not gonna, go do anything that would blame me in the hospital. But it's just like I'm never gonna have that again in my life. It's kind of like high school, I'm never gonna go back to high school. I'm never gonna be a little girl in a hospital again. Because again, even if I went to the hospital, I'm never gonna be, like a little girl who, like the nurses look after and stuff. And again, that sounds so depressing. Like I know I sound like so pathetic right now, being like I'm never gonna be a little girl in a hospital again. But like if I were to go to the hospital now, or I mean I might even be still a little past because I'm only 16. But like when I'm an adult, if I go to the hospital, why I'm not gonna go to a pediatric hospital? I know adult hospitals are generally not as nice as pediatric, which is like a sad fact. Like, there's a lot of great people who work in pediatrics, and not that people who work in adults aren't great people, but it's just like a lot of like empath, kind people who like to work with kids. Most people who choose to work in pediatrics are, very kind, gentle people. I'm sure it's not always the same with adults. Again, not that they're shitty people. It's just like not the same environment. And I wouldn't be kind of looked after the same way if you're like an adult in a hospital. You're not really like infantilized as much by the staff there, and maybe you are, but it's not the same as being like a little girl. You don't have as much pity when you're like an adult in the hospital. You're not like, oh, look at this poor little girl who's been living in the hospital for all these months. Probably not gonna have people like wanna like braid your hair. Again, like I know I sound so like immature and childish, but like I just had like a lot of memories being in the hospital. Like nurses braiding my hair, like spending my birthday there. And it's not even like that I'm never gonna meet those nurses again. Like I got really close to a lot of nurses because again I spent like a large chunk of my life. I mean, considering I'm 16, that's like 1/16, over a 16th of my life. And I don't know, just like something. It's not even just like not going to the hospital again. I'm just kind of not being like a little child again, which I know like I think a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people are like don't like thinking about how they're never gonna be like treated like a child again. But I don't know, just like not gonna like they were kind of like being I don't know, at least from my experience, was fortunate enough to have like a lot of kind nurses and staff. It was kind of like having like a bunch of moms. It's just like an environment that I'm never gonna experience for better or worse. Like I don't want people to be concerned about my health, of course. I don't want health issues. I want to be healthy, live a long, happy life. But it's just kind of like that concern, as selfish as it is, it's like being kind of the center of attention to all these nurses, having people concerned, hoping the best for you, feeling bad, pity. Obviously, I don't want to live a life that's worth pitying. I want to have, if anything, I want to have a life that people envy, be like, oh my God, I want to have a life like her, good for her. But, there's just kind of like that childish, like, comforting feeling of having people feel sorry for you or just want to protect you. And it was also it's like another layer of like stupidity when you think about how like nurses they don't actually love you. Obviously they might be kind of people, they might have sympathy for you, but they weren't actually like your mothers. Like it's their job to take care of you. Again, I'm sure a lot of them are great people, but all in all, you're a patient that they're gonna probably forget about or not think about that often. In a few years, they won't remember you. Maybe less than that, even if they have a big impact on your life. But yeah, even that being said, it's not like I remember every nurse I've ever had. I don't remember every phase. And I feel like it's just such like I mean, I know it's not like a completely unique experience. I'm sure there's other people who feel a similar way, who've spent like a good chunk of their childhood in the hospital or some other kind of traumatic place. But it's also kind of like an isolating feeling because again, like there's some people who feel the same way, but there's a lot of people who will never kind of understand that, which again is fine. Not everyone has to understand everything about you, but I know like a lot of people, if I were to kind of like explain it, they'd probably be like, "What do you mean you missed the hospital? Like, what do you mean you liked it in like some kind of sick way. I don't know, like just like being cared for. You know, maybe one day I can like be an actor and I can play like I can play like a sick girl in a hospital. Maybe that'll cure my miss. I don't know how I'd word that. My miss of being in a hospital. Although I think I'll probably reach a certain age where I wouldn't be able to play a little girl in a hospital. But I don't know. It's just like such a big part of me. I mean, I don't want it to be a big part of me. I don't want to like. I'm not gonna become a nurse. I'm not gonna. It's not something I talk about a lot. Like talking about it now, but not to like people I know in real life. Often, you know, maybe if I like get really close with them, you know, one day I'll be like, oh yeah, I spent like over a year in a hospital. But it's not something I bring up immediately or talk about even often with people I'm close with. But it is like something that it's just like a big part because it's not even like that long ago. I mean, I'm 16 now. I was in the hospital when I was like 13, 14. And like, I don't want that to define me. It doesn't define me. There's like so much more to me than that. You know, sometimes I'll kind of get like in a bad place and I'm like, you know, I'm just that girl who was in the hospital and like, it's kind of hard to get beyond that point. I know realistically I've grown. You know, since then I've gone to high school. When I first went to the hospital, you know, I was in middle school and I missed my freshman year. And then, as stupid as it is, you know, I missed prom because I just went, you know, a couple months ago. I missed prom and I missed my high school graduation, which is like so pathetic. Because I remember when I was in the hospital, when I was, you know, I think it was like the summer of 8th grade. And I remember there was another patient there who she had prom that year. And I remember she missed, like there was a couple of the patients there who, you know, it was like prom season and they were all missing their prom. And, you know, we were all like, you know, oh, well, you know, we made like a little sign for them. It was really cute. We made a sign. It was like, you know, happy prom. Because we felt bad. And, you know, I was in my head, you know, I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, there's no fucking way I'm going to ever miss my prom. Like, all this shit's going to be behind me by the time I'm prom age. Like, you know, I'm never going to miss my graduation. I'm not going to miss my 16th birthday. I didn't miss my 16th birthday, but I didn't do anything for it. Not that I'm complaining, you know, but I didn't have like a party or anything. I didn't see any friends on my 16th birthday. But, you know, I didn't go to prom. I didn't go to my graduation because I was in the hospital. And, you know, I think I'd be fucking really mad at myself if I were to go back. And again, like the last time I went to the hospital wasn't intentional. It wasn't really, you know, something, you know, super my fault. I mean, you know, sort of. But if I were to go back in time and, you know, tell like younger me, like, oh yeah, you're gonna be in the hospital for your prom, like you thought, like that'd be so pathetic. And then now here I am out of the hospital, post missing my prom, missing the hospital. Again, not strongly enough that I would ever do something to go back. That also just fucked me up, even if I did genuinely want to go to the hospital like that, you know. I got college now to worry about. If I went to the hospital again, then that wouldn't be good. I already missed my prom. I don't want to miss anything of this school year. I don't want to miss any more summer. I don't want to miss anything else. You know, I can already check being in the hospital off my like bucket list. You know, I don't have to do that ever again. If I ever got like cancer or some shit, you know, hoping not to jinx that, you know. I've never had any signs of cancer, but just saying if I ever got like some terminal illness, you know, I'd probably freak the fuck out. Like, I mean, would that like, because I don't even know if that would be the same like mentally, because I'll never be like a little girl in a hospital. Again, that's such like a dumb, like most don't be a little girl in a hospital. Like that's not a goal. That's not a career. That's not, again, like unless I was to become like an actor, which I don't know, maybe that would like itch some part of my brain, or if I were to like model or for like a hospital photo. But I mean, I think a lot of people have kind of like, I mean, do other people have like weird desires? I mean, I'm sure plenty of people do. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have like sadistic. I mean, at least my desire. Again, not that that's my desire. It's just, you know, a deep intrusive thought. At least it's not, you know, like I want to kill someone. It's not like murderous. It's not like mean to anyone else. The only thing it's like mean to is just, you know, kind of selfishly wanting that attention from nurses. You know, maybe if I get attention from other people, I'll feel less that way. And this isn't something that consumes me every day. It's just kind of, you know, every once in a while I'll get kind of reminded somehow. I'll like talk to like a friend I was close with during that time. I'll see like, you know, a picture of someone else in the hospital. The worst thing is like people you know. You know, because I'm still close to like a lot of patients that I met during the hospital, like funny enough. You know, I guess it kind of makes sense. You get, you know, close when you're going through difficult, traumatic times. You like bond with people faster or something like that. I don't know. That's something I've heard before. Like I know like people like supposedly like fall in love quicker in like dangerous situations just because like all the stress of it all. But you know, like I've had a couple of friends who've like I met in the hospital and they've like gone back to the hospital since. You know, in like some kind of sick way. I like feel not even like jealous, but kind of like not even like competitive. Like that sounds stupid. You know, I'm self-aware, but just kind of like, oh, like I don't know, my life seems boring in comparison, which is like the funniest thing ever because, you know, in reality, being in the hospital is boring as shit. I don't know. I don't like, I'm not, again, like, I'm not saying I'd rather be in the hospital than where I am now. I'm just saying, you know, there's like this sick little tiny piece of me, you know, that every once in a while will just pop up and being like, you know, I kind of miss the hospital, low key. Low key, you know, would go to the hospital for a day or so, but I think I'm past it enough. I've spent enough time where I can be like, all in all, not doing that shit again. I've missed too much. Missed too many holidays, too many birthdays, too many Christmases, just too much shit, you know? Like sometimes I wonder like who I would be if I never went to, again, like it was only like, you know, a year and a half. Like a year together and then, you know, adding everything else up, you know, a year and a half, maybe a little longer. You know, so it's not like I missed my entire life, you know. There's plenty of people who spend such a longer part of their life in the hospital, you know, and that I feel really terrible for, you know, I can't imagine spending like a whole chunk of your childhood in the hospital. It's fucking awful. But I did spend a chunk of my childhood in the hospital. And it was, you know, again, like kind of formative years, you know. Like I didn't go to my freshman year of high school. I didn't graduate middle school. I missed my prom. You know, I missed some pretty big stuff. And I kind of wonder, like, how different would I be? Not only just because I would have, you know, experienced that stuff. I would have experienced more high school. I would have experienced just more friendships, more, I don't know, interactions that a lot of teenagers have. But also, you know, how would I be if I didn't have all those hospital experiences? If I didn't, you know, have all that angst, all that, you know, pent up stuff. Because I think in some ways I've kind of, you know, that's kind of helped me mature in some ways. You know, I had like a lot of time to ponder, you know, many days, many weeks, you know, seeing no one besides, you know, nurses, just kind of, you know, isolated, you know, offered like a lot of self-reflection for better or worse. A lot of journaling came out of that, a lot of songwriting, a lot of reading, you know, read like all the Harry Potter books, read all the Hunger Games, um, Divergent, you know, all those like big series, you know, cross those off, you know, watch some movies that I'd never seen, you know, try to get something out of it, try to, I guess that's a good thing, honestly, I got from all that time is, you know, trying to make the most of time because, you know, I fucking couldn't do a lot. I couldn't do school. I mean, I could do some of it online, but couldn't, you know, wasn't be able to work during that time. You know, I felt very unproductive, so I kind of tried to make the most of what I had, like reading books that, you know, I don't know, just trying to do anything I could, honestly, drawing art. Like, I got really into art during that time. I would, you know, write letters to friends. I would make like 11 letters a week, or if not more, you know, every single week to different friends I had. You know, it was a way to keep myself occupied. I've learned a lot of, you know, coping strategies, I guess. You know, I think that's kind of part of the reason why I am kind of in, I don't even want to say it's like destructive, but just, you know, I have a very strong sense of I can't waste time. I always have to be doing something. I think a lot of that is from spending a whole chunk of my life unable to do shit, where I kind of feel like, well, now you have that time. Now you have this freedom. Now you know, have a phone with you. You have your guitar. You have schoolwork. You have access to the internet. You know, now you have to always be doing something, or else you're wasting that time. You know, if you, when you were in the hospital, knew that you were being lazy right now, when you can do all this stuff, you would be, you know, cursing yourself out. You'd be like, how dare you be lazy now? You know, you were forced to be lazy for all this time in the hospital, not able to do shit, you know. Now you have this. You gotta use it. I think, you know, maybe I would be kind of more of a go with the flow kind of person. I mean, I think I'm go with the flow in the way that I adapt to change easily because I have had like a lot of change in my life. But I think I'm very, I just like impatient. Like I don't like wasting time. I always like to be doing something, feeling productive. If I don't feel productive that day, it kind of ruins my mood. And, you know, I think if I didn't spend all that time in the hospital, I probably wouldn't feel that strict because I would have, you know, had kind of more of a laid back, you know, childhood, at least like, you know, that chunk of my childhood. You know, I'm not sure how like foster care and stuff would have played into that if I didn't go to the hospital, but, you know, there are good things that came out of the hospital. Again, like a lot of emotional growth I had. But I also have a lot of feelings like, you know, most people I meet aren't gonna understand these things. I mean, in like some ways, I'm sure they can, like the general emotions, but, you know, most people I meet aren't gonna be people who spent a lot of time in their childhood in the hospital, so it's not something I can express as much. I can't really, not as many people are gonna understand that, which, you know, unfortunately, it feels kind of like a core part of me that I kind of, again, not that like I want to tell everyone about that, you know, it's not something I share a lot, but, you know, just like, as much as I don't like it, it is kind of like a big factor in my personality that kind of shaped a lot of me. Just like how any years in your childhood shape a big part of you, you know, that was a year in my childhood. But, you know, in some ways it's good that it kind of made me more of a productive type personality. You know, maybe I would be a lot more lazy if I didn't go to the hospital. But, in some ways I kind of hate how I can't, I kind of enjoy the moment sometimes, it's not awful. I think I've gotten a lot better with it. But I think, sometimes I'm kind of self-aware that it's like, I need to, yeah, again, I like being, obviously. I wouldn't be angry with myself for being unproductive if I didn't, feeling like I'm always doing something. But, sometimes I kind of hate how there's other people my age who kind of just, don't give a fuck, and they're just, kind of floating through life, which, all in all, I think I prefer my personality, no shame to that. I like feeling like I'm accomplishing shit, but, sometimes I wish I could just kind of turn it off and just, not always be stressing about, what's the next thing I'm going to do, oh, I didn't do this today, I gotta do that at some point, I haven't accomplished anything this month, this month is going to be unmemorable, maybe part of my romanticization or whatever you call it the hospital is because of that. Maybe it's like, I'm always trying to make myself, work and be productive, so when you're in the hospital you kind of force laziness upon you, a forced vacation. You're not able to work, you can't do a lot of shit, you're kind of forced to sit in a bed and, your only options are really like read a book or watch TV. So maybe I'm kind of just like in that all or nothing mindset where it's like either I'm in the hospital doing absolutely nothing, and then, or I'm out of the hospital doing as much as I can for as many hours as I can. That's why I feel guilty falling asleep, because I'm like, you slept for days in the hospital, like you were depressed as fuck, like you would be in bed for weeks, like you wouldn't do anything, I had books there, I had TV most of the time. Some hospitals were better than others, some didn't have TV or books, but even in the ones where I would just get so depressed where I would just sleep in my bed for days, which when I'm thinking about now, like, oh, I miss the hospital, like that's not the part I'm thinking about. I always kind of what's the word, like conveniently forget, like, the worst of it, which obviously, it doesn't take long for me to remember it because it is something that, affected me. But, I would just like, even if I had like a TV or a book, which obviously you get bored of that fairly quickly, I would just, sleep for days, do bare minimal anything, I wouldn't talk to anyone. A lot of times I didn't have, I didn't really get visits ever. I probably had like less than, count on like both hands, how many visits I had in the total of, all that time. Which, some of that was me just kind of isolating. Also, I didn't have many people to visit me because I just was kind of isolated, Once you spend that much chunk of time away from, when you're like in middle school or high school, if you kind of disappear for a few months, it's not long until people kind of move on. It's not always like the worst thing, People aren't going to wait forever for you, especially when you're young. But kind of added to the loneliness, which is probably another reason I got like close with like other patients and stuff. And but yeah, that's like why now whenever I sleep in, I kind of wake up and I'm like, why the fuck do, like, I get like honestly really not like aggressively mad at myself, like I don't act on it, but just like in my head I'm like, how dare you sleep in, like, how many times you slept in the hospital where you didn't have anything else to do, you didn't really have a choice, like all you could do there was sleep, so why are you sleeping now? Like, you've slept plenty, like you don't have to sleep anymore, sleep the bare minimum and then spend the rest of your time doing shit that you would have been so grateful to do then, I think another, not even positive, another thing from the hospital is it's made me so much more of a grateful person. Sometimes I'll still walk into the store and be like, damn, I didn't, I spent, a long time without going to any store, so I'll still sometimes kind of be in awe. Or, just like being in a car, I miss being in a car so much, having Spotify, listening to music, playing music. There's so many things. Sometimes I'll just wake up one day and be, kind of experience it all over again. I don't even know if that feeling will ever go away. I'm sure it will, kind of wear and tear eventually, but sometimes even now I just kind of get hyper aware of like, it's so fucking beautiful outside, like, I would spend months without having any fresh air, which, like, I don't want to even sound like I'm like, I'm sure there's plenty of people who've had it way worse. There's people who've been in prisons, there's people who've spent longer times in the hospital, but it's still very big for me. And, I'm glad I've become more of a grateful person. But, sometimes it's kind of, I feel like angry when I'm not being grateful enough, where I'm kind of like, you have all this now. You have, school, you're able to talk with friends, you have the internet, you have your guitar, you have whatever, you have all this stuff you didn't have. How dare you not be utilizing it? How dare you still, like, that's why, sometimes I get mad. Again, mad's not the right word, but, like, if I'm reading a book, I'll be like, you had plenty of time to read books back then, you'd be pissed if you were, back there thinking, oh, I'm reading books now that I'm not in the hospital, like, I've already done that plenty, do the other stuff that you couldn't do back then. But in reality, it's reading a book, like, most people aren't going to argue that reading a book is bad. And I don't, I still read books, because fuck that. But, if I were to spend all day reading, I would probably eventually kind of be like, you're past that, that was that chunk of your life. at that time, you know, reading a book was the most productive thing you could do, but now that's like a leisure thing. That's like a free time thing. And you've had more than enough free time. That's why I don't watch TV anymore, honestly. If I never went to the hospital, I'm sure I'd watch a lot more TV right now. Now, it's not even that I don't like let myself watch TV, but I just can't kind of stand. Oh, there was like there was just like a car pulling in, and I was like, it's kind of late. I was a little confused, but you know, it's not even that I don't let myself watch TV because, you know, I'm like, because I feel that way, but also, you know, like sometimes I can't even stand watching TV. Not that I, you know, am repulsed. It's not like I'll see a TV on and be like, throw up, like, oh, I hate TV. It's not that. You know, I'll just watch a little something if it's on, but I can't sit through a whole movie a lot of the times, which I hate, you know. I mean, I can, like, I don't like, you know, it's not like I haven't watched a movie since. I've still watched movies, but I never do it by myself. I can't watch TV really by myself, honestly. I can never sit down and watch a show because, you know, 15 minutes in, I start feeling like I feel so lazy, you know. I've watched enough TV. You're not going to see me watching cable TV. That's too reminiscent of being in hospital. The only time I really watch TV is if it's with someone else, and, you know, because at least if I'm watching with someone else, you know, it's like I'm having an experience, you know. It's like something more, you know, I'm not going to watch the same movie more than once because, you know, I've already done that, you know. It's not productive to watch the same thing over and over again. And, you know, everything I'm saying is not advice at all. This is all my not great mentality in some parts, but that's just honesty. That's how I feel. Not all the time. I think as time's moved on, I've gotten past that. But, you know, like I said at the beginning of this rambling, is that that's just how I feel every once in a while. Every once in a while, I'll just get reminded. I'll see, you know, a picture of some little girl in a hospital, in a hospital gown, and I'll think, like, I'm never gonna have that again. And that's good. I don't want to be a little girl in a hospital. But, you know, I'm never gonna have that. I'm never gonna be that again. I'm never gonna be, like, as infantilized as that. I'm not gonna be that sick again. And I'm sure there's a couple people out there who feel the same way, who had that same, like, niche teenage childhood hospital experience, but it's just like there's a shit ton of more people who don't understand that, and if I were to kind of try to explain it to them, they'd probably think, like, not even they would think I'm crazy, but they just, like, wouldn't get it. They would probably just be, like, confused. But I'm gonna stop talking here, and I'm gonna feel better. I'm not gonna think about it. Sometimes it helps to think about it. Like, I was just, you know, I feel like a little better now after chatting, but I'm probably gonna do some writing. That's a healthy thing I got from the hospital. I didn't really write as much before. Now I do. Alright. Good night.